Getting back to the judiciary, I mean, there's so many people to blame here, but in terms of the foreclosure fraud crisis, I'm not talking about the real estate crisis, okay, and why that happened, and the bank crisis and the liquidity crisis, but talking about this crisis that we are in right now. The judges, I think, have a lot of explaining to do, because one of their main responsibilities here in Florida is that they are supposed to maintain an independent and honorable judiciary. They're supposed to maintain high standards of conduct, and most importantly, they're supposed to make sure that they maintain the integrity and independence of the judiciary, which means that they are not supposed to allow anyone, I don't care if it's Deutsche Bank, I don't care if it's Citibank, I don't care if it's Bank of America, to literally hijack an entire branch of the U.S. government, effectively privatize it, and turn it into its own collection agency, okay? That is not supposed to happen, and the judges have allowed that to happen. Now, on the judges' behalf, the argument would be that they're not paid enough, they don't have enough staff, they're not capable of handling 250 foreclosure files a day, and that there was just too much pressure on them. Most people weren't coming in with lawyers. The lawyers who were coming in weren't that convincing, which I say is not true. But most people did not have lawyers. 95% of the folks did not have lawyers, and therefore the judges were just doing their job. Let me tell you, I've heard that line before in history, and I will not buy it, and I don't buy it. What the banks are doing now in terms of this foreclosure crisis is to a large extent what I would call offensive pass interference. And so here they are as the plaintiff trying to throw you out of the house, but they're doing it by cheating. And that's what offensive pass interference is, it's a form of cheating. But it's funny because in football, we all accept the consequences of offensive pass interference. In fact, when I was at my daughter's homecoming, there was an offensive pass interference, and the crowd accepted the fact that the touchdown didn't count, and had that touchdown counted, the home team probably would have won that night. But everyone accepted those rules. It's funny now when we catch the banks literally with their hand in the cookie jar, when we see that they have fraudulently created documents, when they have falsified documents, backdated documents, and have caused perjury, that we hear from various parts of the government, including in part sometimes from the Federal Reserve, that it's just a small documentation problem. It can be redone, okay? You don't get a redo when it's offensive pass interference. It doesn't count, and usually there's a personal foul of some sort, and the ball goes back 20 or 30 yards from where it started, okay? That's what we're going to have happen here. But we have to make sure that the rules are applied fairly. And up until now, or until very recently, that was not the case. But because of this massive amount of press and the amount of pressure that attorneys such as myself and other counsel around the country are placing on the system, I feel that we are starting to see a playing field that is going to give the little guy a fair shot. And that's all we're asking. We're all asking for a fair shot. And to a large extent, people are saying it doesn't matter, they didn't pay the mortgage, they should be thrown out of their homes. I mean, that's one of the arguments, okay? That's the same argument as saying the guy doesn't deserve a trial because he did it, okay? And in our system, it goes to the core of our American values that every person is entitled to their day in court, every person is entitled to due process, and the banks do not have a separate judicial system for them. And I will tell you that up until now, what we have seen is literally two sets of rules. We have seen a set of rules that you apply for ordinary judicial issues, and then you had this lore, not law, but lore, L-O-R-E, that just kind of evolved into a new set of rules that the judges on their own decided to implement that had no precedent. They decided that you didn't have to prove affirmative defenses, that lawyers only had 30 seconds to present their case when people were being denied their homes, okay? Just rules that didn't exist anywhere else in the judicial system. And it had to take the appellate court time and time again telling the judges, no, that's not the rules. That isn't the law. And what those appellate judges were doing, they weren't saying this is the new law, we've changed the law. The appellate judges were saying, and they're doing it in a very nice way, you're not following the law. That's not the law, follow the law. That's not the law, follow the law. And now, all of a sudden, the judges, guess what they're doing? They're following the law. And that means that if a bank wants to bring a summary judgment, they better have the note. They better have the assignment. They better have defeated all affirmative defenses. If not, the bank has to go to trial and prove that they own the mortgage and the note. And I'll tell you a little secret. They don't always own the note. They don't always own the mortgage. And that's a problem. That's a real problem for the banks. And they knew it was a problem, because if they didn't know it was a problem, they would not have encouraged perjured documents, falsified documents, fraudulent documents, and backdating of documents. Let's talk about title insurance, because this is wild. You have one title company that says that you can't write title insurance on GMAC paper. You have another title company that says that they obtained from Bank of America a blanket indemnity, saying that if we committed any problems, any fraud, they don't use the word fraud, they say any problems with our foreclosures, we will protect Fidelity Title Insurance, which is the largest title insurance in the country. Then Fidelity tells all their title agents, and for all other banks, you have to get a separate indemnity before your client can buy an REO, real estate owned, in the market from a bank, or if you want to buy from the steps. So now you're an investor from Germany or from Israel or from Chile, and you say, well, how do I get this indemnity? And the answer is, you can't. You can't get the indemnity. It'll never happen. It's nonsense. But Old Republic says, no problem. We'll insure it. We'll insure it. If Fidelity doesn't insure it, we'll insure it. So you got one title company who's willing to take on tons of risk. God bless them. They want to keep the market going. And these guys are very nervous. And they're nervous because they know there's a problem. So they want the indemnity. They got one from Bank of America. They're not getting it from the other banks. And Old Republic says, nah, it's not a problem. We're glad to accept the responsibility. And the banks refuse, other than Bank of America, to execute indemnities to Fidelity, which is really interesting. Because if you don't think it's a problem and you don't think you did something wrong, you ordinarily would give an indemnification to someone because you know you didn't do anything wrong. I'll indemnify you. Sure, I didn't do anything wrong. Sure, right? But except for Bank of America, the other banks refuse to give Fidelity an indemnification, which means they're suggesting that they don't want to be responsible for these fraudulent activities that have been caused somewhere in this chain of events that started when they purchased or initiated the loan. It's absolutely fascinating, and in all my years, I never thought that I'd be lecturing to the public, to a group of folks in a live audience about something that historically, title insurance used to be the most mundane issue on earth. People didn't know about it. They thought it was just an extra cost on a closing statement. They would say they're being overcharged and it's too much money and why do I have to pay for this? And let me tell you, I got clients who are thrilled that they got title insurance right now from their foreclosure purchases that they've purchased in the past several months. I would get phone calls, have you issued that title policy? I need that title policy, I need that title policy. Because they want to make sure that if they have a bad foreclosure, that they have an indemnity from either Fidelity or Old Republic. And I'm thrilled to have provided those title insurance policies to my clients. Fannie and Freddie, today is actually a historic day. I'm going to digress just for a second. Today, Fannie and Freddie went into David Stern's office, and he filed, I think, 75 or 80,000 foreclosures last year, and they pulled all their files, every single one of them. And I know that they're employees, and I feel terribly for them. Their resumes are on the street right now, and I know his stock, according to the Wall Street Journal, which went out at $10 just less than a year ago, is now trading at like 85 cents. But you basically have a vote of no confidence in his enterprise, and it's unfortunate. But Fannie and Freddie is saying that they, want to make sure that this process is done correctly because, of course, they own a lot of the mortgages and the notes. But at the same time, they're not acknowledging the constitutional issues in terms of how homeowners have lost their homes in many cases where the banks did not have constitutional standing to initially even be in court in the first place. Let's talk about market trends. Obviously, the dark red suggests that that's where the states have the biggest problems. Florida is clearly one of the worst. Michigan, particularly Detroit, California, Nevada, Arizona, a little bit of Idaho. That's kind of interesting. But the main crisis is certainly Florida and California, Nevada. And in Florida, as we can see right here, we're in the east coast of Florida. Cal, can you want to pull in right here a little bit? We have the South Florida coast, Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach, and then we have places around Orlando, and of course the West Coast, Lee and Collier counties are also having problems. In the dark red, it's 1 in 72 homes are in foreclosure actions have been filed. We haven't seen this problem of this magnitude since really the Great Depression. Certainly not in my lifetime, and unless you're way into your 80s, you've probably never seen it before either. Foreclosures in South Florida. South Florida has more than 59,000 homes in distress just in this past quarter alone, 24% increase from the previous quarter. That's a huge increase, 9% increase from the same quarter last year. Everyone said that the problem was going to get better. Do you remember that? They said, oh, the problem's going to get better? Those are the realtors telling you that. Ranking, we're in Florida ranking 7th in the nation now for foreclosures. 1 out of 41 homes is in some stage of foreclosure now in the state of Florida. Again, Florida is one of the worst when it comes to the amount of inventory that actually exists. And this is very interesting. In Florida, 14% of all inventory represents homes that are somehow in foreclosure in one way or another. Let's talk about long-term projections here in terms of what this all means to someone who's looking to buy a home, someone who's looking to sell their home, or even looking to maybe rent instead of buy. The prognosticators previously were suggesting that 2012 was going to be the bottom of the market. And now the economists, for the most part, are suggesting, particularly because of this foreclosure crisis, that we're pushing it out another 2 years to 2014, meaning that we're looking at real estate values sliding anywhere between another 10 and 30% in total over the next 24 months. That would mean that by 2017, or probably more like 2019, you will have homes that are no longer underwater, because once we hit that 2014, we'll slowly start to come out. And that would put us back at 2017 or 2019, just to be on par with our mortgage. Doesn't mean there'll be any equity in our homes. It just means there won't be any negative equity in those homes. And it's unfortunate, but if you have this information, you now are in a position to figure out what you're going to do with your home and with your family, and what you want to do with your life.